they said, "Hey, man, we're going to be talking about this on the show tonight. Man, you guys got anybody who would be on the Greta Van Susteren show?" I'll do it. I'm free. So Greta Van Susteren's original show had like 10 live shots. It was nothing but live guests all over the place. And I had never in my days heard a producer freaking out.
From the Performance Racing Network studios at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Trouble, we got a car in the wall. 4, 5, 6 cars pile in. Jimmy Johnson now pulls to the bumper. He's going to try to make a move on through it.
It's Racers Odds. Now, here are your hosts, John Roberts, Jeff Hammond, and Jeff Caliandro.
And welcome, everyone, to the Racers Odds. This is a joint production of the Performance Racing Network and the Visa Network, and we want to take a moment to welcome all our new viewers on NASCAR.com. As we mentioned, I'm John Roberts. He is our racing expert, championship crew chief Jeff Hammond, and our odds expert is Jeff Caliandro, who will be joining us every week to tell you where the smart money is when it comes to wagering on NASCAR's top series. So first of all, Jeff Hammond, when you look at this race, there's nothing more all-American than auto racing at Daytona on the 4th of July weekend. But we're also witnessing a little bit of history as well, as this is the last time this race will be on this date in this part of the year.
Yeah, that's a pretty big announcement that came earlier in the season. It's going to be a big change here in 2020, and I think it's going to be one that's going to make things real interesting because of where they're going to fit Daytona in. So that'll be unto itself something we'll be looking forward to next year. But when you talk about tonight, you talked about smart money. How about being smart when it comes to racing here tonight? A lot of people say, what is the key to try to be able to win at this race? Well, you know, I like to say you got to have a little ESP and luck, but along the way, what does that really mean? You got to have the ability to recognize things before it happens. You got to have anticipation. You got to be looking at whether you're leading this big pack or whether you're back in the pack and you're trying to figure out where you need to be going. You got to sometimes look far enough ahead of yourself along with your spotter to know that there's guys that are not playing nice together and we're getting ready to have a big one. Because when you come to Daytona, believe it or not, this place is always notorious for having a big one. Even back in the spring, we wrecked 21 cars during the Daytona 500, and in 2018, we took out 26. So this is one of those races that the big one is always looming, like any other super speedway race, but you've really got to think about what you want to do, where you want to be. If you want to get through this and have a chance to win, you really need to be on top of your game. And one other thing I want to add, coming in here to Daytona, Denny Hamlin did win the Daytona 500, and Denny will be looking to go, I call back-to-back, basically win both the spring as well as the summer race or the midpoint race here at the 400. And it's only been done 5 times, folks, by 5 other drivers. Last time a driver did it, believe it or not, it's Mr. 7-time himself, Jimmy Johnson, back in 2019. The first guy to do it was Fireball Roberts. So It's really tough to get it done here. So if you want to wind up winning, he wants to wind up winning the night, he's got to be both lucky and good.
Yep, and that's the story at Daytona every time. And also, the odds are pretty good that you're going to see a thunderstorm or two when you race in July at Daytona.
Don't say that. Well, Come on now.
If you take a look at what's going on weather-wise right now, I
was trying to rain on my parade
in the area. Well, not necessarily raining on the parade, but we hope that it goes that the rain that's there right now moves out of the area quickly and they can get to the business of drying that racetrack, because it is a pretty big job right now. There's been some storms throughout the day, and we will definitely keep an eye on that for you throughout this edition of Racers Odds. But right now we want to bring in Jeff Caliandro, who is our wagering expert. And Jeff, for some of the people that are new to wagering, there's a few guidelines that you need to know in order to make this safe and basically a fun and also at times profitable endeavor for people.
There sure is, John. You know, before we get started, it's important to remember that wagering on any sport is difficult, and NASCAR is no exception. You want to always bet within your limits, never chase losses. NASCAR has the ability to captivate the bettor like no other sport. but it's important to stay grounded, have fun, and never risk more than you can afford to play with.
Yep, very good advice there, Jeff. So throughout this edition of Racers Odds, and every weekend, every race day, we'll be here with you to tell you who's done what in the past at these racetracks and who might be the odds-on favorite when it comes to individual drivers winning the race themselves or matchups and groups along the way. So Jeff Hammond mentioned just a moment ago that it's very difficult to sweep both races. And why is it so difficult? Well, a lot changes between February and July for the guy who won it back in February. Let's check in, see what Denny Hamlin had to say about the possible repeat.
Well, the reason it's so hard is because you can't it's not about a fast car. It's not like you can hit on a setup at a racetrack and then sweep both races. You see that a lot in a season, that whoever wins the first race at, call it Pocono or Martinsville or Richmond, they've won that race because they've hit a setup and their car's fast. So when they go back there, they use those notes and they're going to be fast again. At Daytona, it's not setup driven. It is strategery that you really have to make yourself a great race car driver here. It is just putting yourself in the right position at the right time and avoiding the wrecks. And those two, it's hard enough to win one because of all the variables, much less win two in the same season at the same racetrack. It's just, it's so hard to do. The odds are stacked so far against you, and that's why you see it just doesn't happen that often.
So every once in a while, when you head into a Cup weekend for NASCAR, qualifying gets rained out, and therefore, by the rule book, you start by order of points. That puts Joey Logano on the pole. But, Jeff Hammond, there's a couple of things you got to look at when you go into this race. First of all, you can win this race from the back of the pack. It's been done before. Qualifying is not quite that important, so it's not that bad to be starting in the back of the pack. We have a few drivers going back there as well. But also, this is the first time for a new aerodynamic compound in these cars. It's the same we ran at Talladega, but it's different from what we ran at the Daytona 500. So, Jeff, if you can, I know you could probably talk for hours on the way these cars are different, but basically the restrictor plate's gone away. Mm-hmm. And it's a tapered spacer. It's
a tapered spacer, so that's going to make some difference the way the cars, suck up, the way they, save fuel. A lot of little small intangibles that go along with this style of super speedway combination, I want to call it. I hate using the word package, folks, just so don't take, I'm just trying to avoid the inevitable. But the thing is, it is what NASCAR's got these guys racing right now, and trying to hit that setup to get your car not only where it's fast in a straight line, but here during the July race, this race car has got to handle. Tires are going to go away a little bit. The racetrack's going to be quite a bit different than what it was in February. So a great handling race car, and sometimes great handling race car along with 4 brand new Goodyears can make a huge difference when you're coming up through the pack or just trying to hold your own and navigate around this racetrack. It gets, for some reason, Daytona is a little bit narrower. It doesn't have quite the racing luxury that you have at a place like Talladega. If you start seeing 4 wide at Daytona, close your eyes because it's getting ready to be a big one. And the thing is, you talk about, it doesn't matter where you start. It really matters whether or not, if you can find a good dance partner, in this case, dance partners, and start making that outside line, that third line we talk so much about, whether it's in the middle or on the outside, making it work to where you can get back to the front. Usually the bottom of the racetrack is where a lot of cars will choose to run and try to protect that inside. That way, you've only got to worry about somebody passing you on the outside. The yellow line, in this case, is going to be your friend. And one other thing we don't need to forget about this race, remember, they just recently, they changed the stage number, went from 40 to 50 for the first stage, 50 again, which will be lap 100 for the second stage, and then 60 to complete the final. So it's really thrown a lot more, I like what Denny said a moment ago, strategery into the game, because now what are these guys going to come up with? What kind of ideas, what kind of combinations, what kind of short pitting, what might we see once they drop the green flag?
So a past winner of this race, Dale Earnhardt Jr., said that racing at Daytona is like a bar fight on 4 wheels. There are so many unknowns when you're hooked up in a 200-mile-an-hour freight train. It's hard to find out where the sharp money is. So, Jeff Coyandro, when you look at handicapping this race or setting odds, there are so many unknowns that you don't particularly like the wagering that goes on the head-to-head matchups.
That's right. John, we see so much attrition at Daytona, usually in the last 5 night races at Daytona, 40% of the cars have ended up with some type of crash damage or been involved in a wreck at some level. We see a lot of caution flags. They're averaging 9 for the night race at Daytona, and nearly 26% of the race is run under caution, which obviously means there's a lot of cars in the garage. I think to look at a matchup, you're risking too much based on what you can win when 40% of the cars will probably be taken out or more. I think in this case, you're better off looking at a race winner or maybe even a team of drivers in order to sort of have some strength in numbers. And maybe find yourself a long shot winner. The average for the last 5 races at Daytona, the average winner has had odds of 25-1.
So, Jeff, in a nutshell, for some of our maybe some of our race fans that are new to the wagering game, if you look up and down, just take for instance our Daytona 500 winner Denny Hamlin goes off at 10-1. If I were to bet $10 on Denny Hamlin and he were to win the race, what would that mean to me?
You would profit $100, and you would get back the initial $10 that you bet from your friendly sports book cashier.
Okay, so some of the other ways to wager on NASCAR's Top Series involve those head-to-head matchups we just talked about, but also groups as well. How are those lined up, Jeff? How are the head-to-head matchups done and the groups as well? And what do you stand to gain if you go play in that game when it comes to wagering?
Well, let's start with head-to-head matchups. Head-to-head matchups are basically 2 drivers that are contested against one another. The driver who finishes the race higher amongst the 2, wins that wager. A lot of times you see these odds at what they call -110, which means that you have to lay or put down $1.10 for every dollar you intend on winning. Consequently, you would lay $11 to win 10. And if you did win the matchup, you would collect $21, your 11 profit and your 10 back from the initial bet. Also looking at groups, that's sort of a hybrid between head-to-head matchups and picking a race winner. In a group matchup, there are 4 drivers, and you're trying to pick the driver that will finish the best of the 4. Now, the advantage to a group wager is that if your driver can beat the other 3, the odds are higher and the payout is better than would be a head-to-head matchup.
So also, folks, if you are wagering on a football game, say, take that for instance, there's a 100-yard field, and you get 6 points for a touchdown and 1 point for an extra point. But each weekend in NASCAR's Top Series, the playing field changes so greatly. This weekend, we're on a 2.5-mile high-speed super speedway. A couple weeks ago, we were on a road course, then a 1.5-mile track. They are all different, and they all have their own idiosyncrasies. And Hammond, when you talk about racing on the super speedway, no matter if it's a restrictor plate, tapered spacer, or anything, we have seen huge surprises. We have seen huge wrecks. We've seen no wrecks. We've seen drivers, I think Dale Earnhardt Jr. did it once from almost second to last starting spot, come through and win this race. So many different things can happen over the course of 400 miles.
No, it really is. And the thing that we've really noticed in recent years, when you start realizing the guys who went on these super speedways, they're getting younger and younger. It's almost like it's a young man's, game out there, and they're not afraid to play chicken at, almost 200 miles an hour. For whatever reason, they've been able to get the job done. As a matter of fact, I think at Daytona, the last 3 out of 4 races we've run there, the guys who have won, the drivers who have won, have been under 30 years of age. So it just goes to show you, a lot of places we go, folks, we kind of push the experienced driver. This is one of those times where the younger guys have been coming through, and it's probably a whole lot to do with they've been able to challenge and go places and not afraid to go places that some of these other guys with experience. I told you before, sometimes recognizing what's getting ready to happen. Well, if you can get through there before it happens, you're the winner. The rest of them are losers.
And this is what we refer to as a wild card race. You can see somebody who's not used to winning win one of these races. And for one of the smaller race teams, it could mean millions of dollars if they are able to get a win. And that puts them in the playoffs with their sponsors and everybody else and everything else that goes involved with being a member of the playoffs. So therefore, we could see desperate moves from desperate drivers, something to keep an eye on. Another thing to keep an eye on, we got to keep our eyes to the skies. The radar picture at Daytona is looking a little bit red, a little bit green. We hope that moves through very quickly and we can get to racing at least somewhat on time tonight. When we come back, we'll check in with Pat Patterson. You want to stay with us, race fans, through the rest of this edition of Racers Odds. We'll get you all the information on head-to-head matchups, groups, and also individual drivers who are the odds-on favorite to win at Daytona. We'll be back.
If you suffer from heartburn or other digestive-related disorders, then there is a new, safe, better, and natural alternative to better digestive wellness and heartburn relief. Praxid not only provides relief of heartburn, but Praxid takes a 360-degree approach to support better digestion, protect you from harmful bacteria, and also balance your stomach to improve digestive functions.
To order, call now, 1-800-829-5735. That's 1-800-829-5735.
As states have begun the legalization of sports gambling, the entire sports landscape is changing.
I think we're going to see more and more states fall in line, and this gets legalized across probably all 50 states.
And so is the way you listen to Sports Talk Radio. I'm Brent Musburger, and on the Vegas Stats and Information Network, we follow the money and the games. It's sports talk you can bet on. So check out VSiN. Odds are you're going to like what you hear on Channel 204 and streaming on your phone or at home on SiriusXM connected devices and speakers.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Jake was in big trouble with the IRS. He owed how much?
$92,000.
Ouch. The IRS left no room for Jake to breathe.
They put a lien on my house, took all the money out of my bank account, took money out of my paychecks. So it was a nightmare.
He needed help fast.
I figured that all these companies were the same until I called Federal Tax Management. You could just tell they knew what they were talking about. Right then and there, I felt like I had some hope.
Stop the liens, levies, and garnishments fast and qualify for one of several special IRS programs that could reduce or even eliminate your tax debt. So, how'd it go for Jake?
They did what they said they would do. They came through for me. I ended up saving an unbelievable amount. I was so jazzed. I was extremely happy.
If you owe more than $10,000 in back taxes, take Jake's advice.
Give Federal Tax Management a phone call. If they help me, they can help anybody.
Call the Federal Tax Management Hotline now. 800-425-6381. 800-425-6381. 800-425-6381.
And now more Racers Odds with John Roberts, Jeff Hammond, and Jeff Caliandro.
Welcome back once again, everybody, to Racers Odds. And also, once again, we want to welcome in our viewers and listeners on NASCAR.com. We'll be here with you each week, every race day or race evening. The NASCAR's Top Series is running, and we'll tell you who has done what at the particular racetrack and where some of the sharp money might be along the lines. Now, it doesn't matter what you race or where you race it. Chances are your dream is to drive at the Daytona International Speedway. 40 lucky drivers will be able to do that tonight, and anything and everything pretty much happens when we go to these super speedways. So right now, we want to go to Pat Patterson and check in on the latest on the cars that are going to the back of the pack and some of the cars who may be a little bit more favored after a somewhat wild weekend so far with no qualifying. Qualifying was rained out. We're starting by the rule book, by points. So Pat, what do you see so far? What do you see happening? Are we going to be able to race soon? I hope.
Well, Johnny, first of all, happy 4th of July to everybody. It's great to be talking about a weekend where all of our military allow us to do what we want to do, and especially in Daytona Beach, where we get to go racing at the big 2.5-mile speedway tonight. Weather always a factor here. You mentioned cars going to the back. Biggest story so far, Johnny, this weekend has not been the new package that we're racing on the cars or the track itself. It's been practice of all things, and you know, the line that we followed is Brad Keselowski getting into a real estate dispute with Alex Bowman on the racetrack. William Byron on the racetrack, and that is going to send the number 24 car, Byron, to the back of the field to start tonight's race. Cloudy conditions, thunder showers. Hey, it's Daytona in July, and the weather very unpredictable, as it will be this evening, and it was last night. They didn't get the race started till just after 10 o'clock Eastern time. But the big story, I think, Johnny, is once again, what kind of race will we have tonight in Daytona? Will it be highly competitive and three abreast for lap after lap after lap, or will there be a lot of 2x2 and just kind of killing the laps off to the last 50 of the race? That's kind of a big question mark, and to be honest with you, I don't have any better answer than anybody else does on that side of it.
Well, Pat, when you bring that up, I mean, there's been a lot of speculation and a lot of talk. You know, we had an opportunity to talk to the folks at Chevrolet, and they feel like, you know, we may see, you know, what we've seen in the past a lot of times on these super speedways where the manufacturer have got plans. I mean, they've had meetings, whether it's Ford or Chevrolet or even Toyota, with the different drivers and the different organizations to try to figure out what's going to be the best thing for us as a whole to be able to try to maybe control this race tonight. Have you been hearing about that through the garage?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. Chevrolet's on a mission tonight. Their mission is twofold. Number one, control the pace of the race, control the front of the field, and keep anybody that's got a blue oval or that's driving a Toyota, keep them out of victory lane, because they don't want to put another brand's driver and team into the playoffs. And everybody knows that a win tonight at Daytona for somebody who's not already in is a guarantee that they'll be in the playoffs. So controlling those cars up front and doing the best as a brand to work together is not only important for Chevrolet, but it's also important for Ford to do the same thing tonight. For Toyota, even though they are so much fewer in numbers, still the best restrictor plate racers in the planet, or tapered spacer racers these days, I guess you would call them. You know, if you look back at the February, it was Joe Gibbs 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, they had all of their cars right there. Totally different situation, as you and I both know, Jeff, from February to July. But without question, tonight is all about trying to follow manufacturer orders, or at least what their plan is going to be. And how that impacts the way people race, I think you would agree with me, Jeff. If I'm worried more about helping my brother over here that has a bow tie and keeping another car behind me, am I really thinking about winning the race for myself? And that's where the conflict in my mind appears.
No, and see, I agree with you when you say that. I mean, this is always where that give and take situation kind of comes up, and it kind of rears its ugly head. But the other two factors I feel like, you know, have got to be looked at tonight, and I'm curious about what you're hearing from the garage area, is the fact that they changed the length of the stages. And we know that you've got to get to the end of stage 2 to make this an official race. So to me, I think it throws a lot more, as Denny Hamlin, we did an interview with, or played an interview earlier, the word strategery came out. So again, if you hear anybody that's doing a lot of planning and trying to figure out how they're going to handle this reorganization as far as the stages are concerned?
Well, Jeff, you know how it is in the garage. You can ask a question and you're going to get the answer that they give you, and then there's one you think they wanted that they're going to do, and what they're telling you. I think everybody's being pretty tight-lipped about that right now, because in order to put yourself in position for those stage points, you maybe have to give up track position. You know, if the way your race is unfolding is if you got a car that can drive and lead and be out front, you know, then you're trying to position yourself for a win. If you're Jimmy Johnson, or maybe if you're William Byron, or you're one of those Chevrolet teams that does not have a win like a Kyle Larson. I think the biggest thing tonight is what you just said. It's that pivotal conflict between, all right, am I setting myself up for stage points, or do I just know that this is my driver's only chance to maybe get into the playoffs? If you're back there and you're Ryan Newman, or you're one of those guys that's right on the edge in the points, you know, how that all is going to play out, I think, comes down to the last 50 laps, that last stage of 80 laps. When it gets down to 50 to go, I think that's where you really may see some very interesting strategies employed by these crew chiefs.
Yeah, Patton, this is one of those races where you want to watch every lap, including especially the last one. Pat, thank you for the insight. We appreciate it, man, and happy 4th of July weekend to you and yours.
Same to you guys. Enjoy the holiday weekend. Everybody be safe out there, and we're going to have a good time tonight in Daytona.
Oh, yeah, that is Pat Patterson, Jeff. You know, I think when we talk about wagering on races and what comes to be a wild card race, it's usually some of the short tracks, some of the road courses, and definitely the super speedways, because somebody could do something desperate towards the end of this thing to try to get that all-important win, because we've heard it. This is the driver saying this, not us. If you're not in that playoff 16, if you're left out of the playoffs, you're basically a second-class citizen. No one's talking about you, so this is very important. It's huge for race teams, so sometimes if there's an opportunity for somebody to take a chance and win one of these races, it can skew the odds, but it also can mean huge results for that team.
Well, and then you throw the weather into that play. There's so much is going on behind the scenes right now, figuring out where are we. You know, am I Kevin Harvick, and I'd like to get the win to kind of validate the successful season I have had so far this year, or you're a guy like Austin Dillon who won here at Daytona a couple years ago, and now you find yourself, just on the outside looking in, and you've got a lot of ground to make up, and the races are running down. I think when you start doing the countdown clock to the regular end of the season, there's a group of drivers. Everybody starts kind of getting separate little groups, and these guys are wanting to win just because they want to get that win to make them feel good. They're already in. Then you got another group that needs to get the win to get themselves locked in, because there's no other way for them to point their way in. So there's a lot of different agendas out there. And you've got to recognize when you got people in front of you here at Daytona, which one are you racing with? Because you could get caught up in somebody else's mistake because they've got nothing to lose, and it may wind up being at your expense. So you've got to understand what you're up against, who you're racing with. And also, we talk a lot about manufacturers, but let's realize if you find somebody who's from the other team that can make you go to the front, maybe help you win, or you can help him win, that may be who you need to hook your wagon to make sure you get up toward the front to give yourself a chance to win.
So when you're looking at wagering on racing or odds when it comes to racing in NASCAR's top series, you look at trends a lot. Here's a trend that we may not see come to fruition this year. Usually at this time of year when we go to the playoffs, if you're in right now, chances are you stay in the hunt. This time around, Jeff, with the small number of original winners we have, only 7 drivers have won their way into the playoffs so far. That leaves a lot of room for drivers to point their way in. And when you're trying to point your way in, you're not locked in, a lot can change.
No, a lot of things can change. And you got people like Clint Boyer there on the bubble, and you've seen him fall from grace here over the last 3 races. And he needs to turn it around in a big way. Eric Jones, who won here a year ago, he's 15 out. Ryan Newman, former Daytona 500 winner, he's out. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., former winner here in Daytona in July 4th race, he's 58 points behind, which is, over a race. So these are some guys right now that are needing a big, they need a big win. And that's what's important. You've also, maybe Eric Jones and Ryan Newman are thinking, I just need to keep my nose clean and let everybody else crash out to where I've got basically a windfall of points, because I'm not racing anybody.
Yep. So coming up on the Racers Odds, we're going to take a very close look at favorites to win the race. What drivers are odds on? What drivers are long shots or perhaps value bets as well? We'll look at groups too. We'll be back with much more of the Racers Odds in just a moment.
If you suffer from heartburn or other digestive-related disorders, then there is a new, safe, better, and natural alternative to better digestive wellness and heartburn relief. Praxid not only provides relief of heartburn, but Praxid takes a 360-degree approach to support better digestion, protect you from harmful bacteria, and also balance your stomach to improve digestive functions.
To order, call now 1-800-829-5735. That's 1-800-829-5735.
You didn't think he'd put down the microphone completely, did you?
Greetings from Las Vegas.
Well, neither did we. Hear legendary broadcaster Brent Musburger on the Vegas Stats and Information Network.
I never told my wife how much fun I had when I was staying here for about 3 weeks. Oh, it's terrible living in a casino. It was the greatest 3 weeks of my life. This is the only book in town that's open 24 hours.
There you go.
Make that bet around 4 o'clock in the morning.
You don't need a dress code. Pajamas are good.
Brent Musburger on the Vegas Stats and Information Network. Sirius XM Channel 204.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
If you suffer from heartburn or other digestive-related disorders, then there is a new, safe, better, and natural alternative to better digestive wellness and heartburn relief. Praxid not only provides relief of heartburn, but Praxid takes a 360-degree approach to support better digestion, protect you from harmful bacteria, and also balance your stomach to improve digestive functions.
We like to think of it as the multivitamin of digestive health.
It's the only product to combine all natural ingredients known for the digestive health properties into a single patented product. Praxid also comes in easy-to-carry packs. Praxid relieves, restores, and maintains a healthy digestive system. Praxid is available here for only $39.95. Shipping and handling is free, and your money back is guaranteed.
To take advantage of this special radio offer, call now 1-800-829-5735. That's 1-800-829-5735. Again, 1-800-829-5735.
It's more Racers Odds.
And welcome back once again, everyone, to Racers Odds. This is a joint venture between the Visa Network and the Performance Racing Network. You can also catch us on SiriusXM. And, Jeff, we also really want to welcome in all our listeners and viewers on NASCAR.com. Great to have you along for the ride.
Very excited about them joining us and having an opportunity to see what we've got going on here at PRN, as well as, Visa, because we feel like we've got a new way to kind of like look at our sport and have some more entertainment value. And, let's face it, maybe give you an opportunity, if you know how to do your homework and you get a little bit lucky to go with it, to maybe make some money along the way. Take basically what's going on the fantasy side and make it into reality.
Yeah, so Championship Crew Chief Jeff Hammond is our racing expert here along for the ride with us, but also we have Jeff Coyandro with us, and he's our
expert. Yeah, he's our expert. Yeah.
Expert. So, Jeff, let's dive right into it right now. If I'm sitting at home right now and I'm thinking about, okay, who's going to be the odds-on favorite? First of all, I got to realize that this is super speedway racing. Things can change in a hurry. There might be a bigger value when it comes to odds-on favorite, but if you look at just the straight odds for drivers to win, it almost looks a little bit like our point standings.
Yeah, it sure does, John. You look at Joey Logano, and he absolutely is a deserving favorite going into the race at 8-1. He has 3 wins and 9 top 5s in his last 16 super speedway races. He's starting from the pole. His car was very fast in happy hour alone, and there's just no doubt about it. The biggest worry we have is that he's going to be perhaps one of the 40% that has some sort of crash damage, which basically eliminates him. So it's really all about survival, and that's the one hesitation that you have in taking a favorite at 8-1.
Well, Jeff, you and I were talking earlier, and one of the guys sitting down there a little bit further down at 14-1 that I like has to be Kurt Busch. I mean, he is one of those guys, when you look at trends and you look at the numbers, he's got some very impressive records when it comes to super speedway racing, and more importantly, maybe not so much in the win column, but he definitely has a much higher success rate and finish rate than a lot of other drivers do.
Yeah, Kurt Busch is one of the best absolutely on the circuit. For his career, he's been running at the finish of his super speedway races 83% of the time, and that's about the highest in NASCAR for any current driver. He'll start 8th if he's part of that Chevy alliance that works together. He's absolutely a player in this race.
Jeff, kind of intrigued with Martin Truex Jr. going off at 18-1. Of course, he's one of those guys that's been dominating the series really over the past couple of years. He has never won a race on a super speedway before, but let's not forget he had never won a race on a short track before. That's gone out the window, so this trend could stop as well. It's a little bit surprising to me to see Truex going off at that kind of odds like 18-1.
Yeah, 18-1 is a big price on Martin Truex, but he's only got 2 top 5s in his last 8 Daytona races. But however, he did finish second in this race 1 year ago. So just when you think that a track or a configuration could be a little bit over his ski tips, he reels it in with a win. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him amongst the deep contenders, provided his car is undamaged.
But the thing is, right now, both of y'all are telling me something that makes him maybe a reasonable investment as far as this is concerned, that maybe this time clock is starting to come together, and it may be this weekend, and he can maybe put something up there on the win column, because as you pointed out, he's not ever had what you call, except for really one decent race on a super speedway that we can point to, and that was a year ago. Otherwise, 57 races out of all the active drivers, he has the worst running record as far as anybody's concerned, with 0 wins.
Yeah, you really have to look at the value involved. And you've got Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Martin Truex Jr., both at 18-1. But if you look at 20-1, you've got Eric Almirola, Eric Jones, last year's winner, and Alex Bowman, 3 drivers that definitely have a shot. So you got to kind of compare your like odds and see where you think the better value is.
So rain has started, Jeff, at Daytona. We understand it's a light rain, but it's raining on the track right now. It's going to push the start time up. What does that do, if anything, to the odds we're looking at right now? Does it trend? Do things start pushing?
I think what it really does is kind of squelch the odds and kind of freezes things. Anytime you're adding, the possibility of impending rain coming in, it really makes it very difficult to bet on a favorite like Logano or Keselowski at 8-1. When rain is coming in and you think there's a possibility that it could be a shortened race, well, then you look at someone who really needs a win, perhaps a little bit deeper in the field, maybe 20-1 or more.
So is there a hunger factor there, Jeff, when you look at Clint Boyer? Clint Boyer 14-1. He's ahead of some of those other guys that may have a little bit better records over the recent history on the super speedways. He has got to get him a win or got to get a good run. He's had terrible luck as of late, and he is just barely holding on to his position in the points.
Yeah, he sure is. I think that what worries me about Clint Boyer is at 14-1, he's only finished on the lead lap once out of the last 6 super speedway races. He'll start 16th, which could be in the middle of a pack if they get dicey early. That could create some trouble. So I think 14-1 is a little bit short based on how he's performed at the super speedway level recently.
Jeff, we talk about a lot of times the luck factor when it comes to super speedway racing. And I think the thing is kind of interesting. I think I need to tell the story that Clint's luck has not been very good at the racetrack, but it's also not been very good at the farm. If anybody follows him on Twitter, he tweeted out earlier in the week that he had gone into the barn and he gotten stung in the face by a wasp. And
maybe that's good luck.
Well, maybe it's about time it got turned around. I had bad luck at home. Maybe I'll start having some good luck on the racetrack. But if you were looking for kind of like a sign, is that a good sign or a bad sign?
Well, you mean that Clint Boyer has maybe hit rock bottom?
Yeah, maybe it's about it. It's run its course.
Only go up.
Can only go up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I expect him to be around. It's all about, having a clean car. And if he has a clean car, he will probably be a contender late.
So when you look at some of the longer shots, Jeff, to win, some of the long shots and the guys in the back of the field, when you say field, when you place a field bet, if the name is not mentioned here, now that doesn't leave very many drivers in the field. But if you were ever going for a field bet, would it not be the best time to do it would be on one of these super speedways?
Generally, that's true. Talladega, Daytona is your best shot for a field winner. But what I would challenge you to do is to look at the field, see who encompasses the field, what drivers are made up of the field. And then if there's another driver that you like, or maybe even 2, you might look to find them outside the field number, where their odds would probably be quite a bit higher than 60-1. It's very important to shop your bets around because at the end of the year, that can really make the difference between profit and not.
And Jeff, we basically talk about favorites, we talk about value bets, and then you talk about the long shots that could really pay off big time. When we look at some of our long shots, it's hard to go into a race like this and call driver like maybe Jimmy Johnson, a long shot, some of the guys back in the pack there. Do you see somebody that looks really attractive back there, perhaps a Jimmy Johnson at some of the longer odds to perhaps be a big payoff tonight?
Oh, without question. I think that the approach of taking several drivers and sort of, counting on at least a few of them being around at the end and in contention is really, a wise way to go, because it's proven in the past. There's been a number of long shot winners that have cashed Daytona, whether it be the 500 or the night race. I think you got to look at a driver like maybe Austin Dillon, who's the 2018 Daytona 500 winner, going off at 40-1. Another driver that I like is Bubba Wallace at 60-1. He finished second in the 2018 Daytona 500. And for a driver like Bubba with Richard Petty Racing, this is their biggest chance to win for the year, this in Talladega. So you really know that he's going to pull out all the stops to try to end up in victory lane.
So, yeah, there could be some value there.
Somebody I'd like to add in the end of this right here that comes out of the field and I don't want to overlook is a guy like David Reagan. And David Reagan's won here before. Michael McDowell and his crew chief, believe it or not, Drew Blickensderfer, we talked to him earlier in this week. He's won here at Daytona before with like Matt Kenseth as well as with David Reagan. And these guys have been included in that Ford family because they run so well under restrictor plates. Not say restrictor plates on super speedways. Yeah. They're such good super speedway racers that they could wind up being a big surprise and be in the right position, because if you remember back at the 500, who was battling with Joey Logano for the win? Michael McDowell at this race back earlier in February.
So it's often said that when you go to a super speedway, this is one of the great equalizers because of the way these races tend to shake down. And it's often said that if you fire your engine on one of these racetracks at Daytona or Talladega, you have a chance to win. But Jeff Hammond, if we really want to look realistically at it, okay, in this day and age, realistically, we may not be looking at just this entire 40-car field. If you fire your engine, you have a chance to win. We may be looking more at like perhaps maybe 30 of these race cars, if you feel that's more realistic.
No, you got to put some realism into it. Again, it's anticipation of whether or not this guy can really get the job done. Is he smart enough to be in the right place at the right time? That's where you may be young, and I talked about young drivers have an opportunity to win, but sometimes that experience of understanding how to work traffic and talked about the recognizing and anticipation. If you can keep your nose clean and miss that big one, now you've given yourself an excellent opportunity to get that push you need to make a run for the win. And, we saw that with Michael McDowell back here in the spring. If he'd had just a little more help, if people would have worked together with him, he could have possibly won this race just as easily as Denny Hamlin.
Just like it seems as if there's a scheduled thunderstorm every afternoon in Daytona in the summertime, it seems like there's a scheduled big wreck when it comes to racing, especially at Daytona. We've seen, when we talk about the big one, we're talking about wrecks that take out 12 or more cars. They can take out 12 or more top competitors. They can take out 12 or more in the middle of the pack. And sometimes that's why for years, Jeff, we had people just riding around as a bit of strategy to try to avoid that wreck.
Yeah, and the thing is right now, John, we got to understand and go back and push it forward of everybody understanding we've got to get to the end of the second stage to be able to call this an official race. And what does that mean to us? It means that there's a good possibility if there's rain still lurking in the area and it could possibly come in and settle. If we do get the race underway and we're racing to basically the end of the second stage, business could really pick up, because this is when the guys realize we got to be at the front of the pack, just like we'd be at the end of the third and final stage. It would conclude this race later on tonight. So it really puts an urgency, which normally when you see that picking up at that period of the race, that's when you can definitely count on a big one. Everybody starts worrying more about that track position and making sure they're up there toward the front so they can have a legitimate shot to win this race. So all of these things will be contributing factors. So watching the weather, we'll be racing the weather as well as racing each other to try to get the job done.
Yeah, and earlier this week, NASCAR issued a bulletin to the teams that the stage lengths at Daytona would change. They normally would have shaken down as 40, 80, and 160. I'm sorry, Jeff, I got my 160, yeah. Look at the 160, and now it is 50, 50, 60. So now you got to get to 100 laps to make an official race right now. So that could have a big play tonight, especially with weather in the area. Nowadays, instead of getting to 80 laps, you will have to get to 100 in this case. And there we see that big old blob, the green blob, and a little bit of red moving towards Daytona Beach right now. We hope that moves away quickly and we can get racing underway, at least getting it to the end of that second stage. Got to take a quick break here on Racers Odds. When we come back, we'll start looking at head-to-head matchups and group wagers, where the sharp money might be when it comes to those groups. We'll have the inside information that you need to make the right move. Stay with us, everybody. Racers Odds. We'll be back in a moment.
If you suffer from heartburn or other digestive-related disorders, then there is a new, safe, better, and natural alternative to better digestive wellness and heartburn relief. Praxid not only provides relief of heartburn, but Praxid takes a 360-degree approach to support better digestion, protect you from harmful bacteria, and also balance your stomach to improve digestive functions.
To order, call now 1-800-829-5735. That's 1-800-829-5735.
The Edge, only on the Vegas Stats and Information Network.
How you feeling? I'm feeling good. How you doing, bro? I'm feeling good, man. How you doing? How you doing?
The Edge, weekdays 3 p.m. Eastern.
The Raiders have made some sensational headlines, but I don't think you or I or anybody who seriously handicaps the NFL saying, yeah, the Raiders are going to be a playoff.
I'm talking about public
more about public team, especially in Vegas with the excitement with that team going to be here in 2020.
Only on the Vegas Stats and Information Network. Sirius XM Channel 204.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Do you have an idea for an invention or new product? Do you think companies would be interested in your idea? Do you want to try to get a patent? Then call InventHelp now. InventHelp keeps your idea confidential and explains every step of the invention process. We create professional materials representing your idea and submit it to companies who are looking for new ideas. We have more than 9,000 companies who've agreed to review ideas in confidence. If a company shows interest in manufacturing your invention, we can negotiate on your behalf. We have helped over 10,000 clients receive patents. We also offer services including 3D modeling and animation demonstrating your idea, prototyping services, and we use state-of-the-art technology to show InventHelp client ideas to additional companies. Join the thousands of people just like you who chose InventHelp to pursue their idea. We are experienced. We are working for you. We are InventHelp.
Call us for free information at 1-800-542-6751, 1-800-542-6751, 1-800-542-6751.
We're back with more Racers Odds.
And welcome back to Racers Odds, everybody, and a special welcome to those viewing us and listening to us on NASCAR.com and Sirius XM Radio. Glad you're along for the ride here. We're going to be here with you every race day to give you the information you need to find the sharp money and the good bets when it comes to NASCAR's top series. So this is not the exact right place to be for this particular type of race. Jeff Coyandro told us that before. Earlier, this is not the best area of odds, but then again, still, if you like your head-to-head matchups, Jeff, let's go through a couple of them. Matchups group number one, we see some of the favorites, and just to back up a little bit for informational purposes, if you take a look at matchups number one, you see Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski teammates. You see a minus 110 out to the side of both of them. Jeff, what does that mean?
Yeah, well, that means, John, that you have to lay $1.10 to win $1. Basically, it pays 91 cents on the dollar if you win the matchup. So ultimately what happens is both lines are set at minus 110. Somebody might bet on Logano and somebody might bet on Keselowski. Let's say they both put $10 on or $11. If Logano were to win the matchup, his bet would then collect 21, while the loser would have paid his 11, and the $1 would go to the casino or the sports book. That's their commission for booking the bet.
So even though, Jeff, this is not the place where the sharp money would be on head-to-head matchups, if you do look at that group, is there anything you like in particular in group number one as perhaps being one of the better or perhaps lesser of all evils?
Well, I think you've got to look at everything individually. And in taking matchup section number one, I would have to say if I were looking at any of them, I like Chase Elliott at even money over Kyle Busch. Chase Elliott won the Talladega race this year, and I think he's got a manufacturer advantage going into Daytona, and I like him as an underdog. So that would be my reasoning behind Chase Elliott going into the race.
All right, let's move on to our second group of matchups where you start seeing some different drivers in here. Of course, Clint Bowyer, definitely a hungry driver right now, wants a win. Kurt Busch is in the same boat as well. But one we talked about earlier amongst two Jeffs here that was kind of interesting was the Eric Almirola, Martin Truex Jr. Wager. You see Martin there is at the 120 and Eric Almirola at even money right there. What intrigues you about that one, Jeff?
I'd have to say that when you look at Eric Almirola, you know that he's won prior on a super speedway. So he's got Truex beaten in that factor. He's also an underdog. And we've seen him, as a super speedways really be one of his best chances to win in terms of his driving style. He was obviously in deep contention to win the 2018 Daytona 500 before being spun. So you've really got to like Almirola just from a basic standpoint of being able to adapt to a super speedway.
And the other thing we've talked about it a couple of different times, and we'll point it out again, is unfortunately for Martin Truex Jr., he has never won on a super speedway race when it comes to 57 starts. And to me, that's the largest number of races, I should say, longest number of races of any active driver. So a lot like his short track program, he's been suffering when it comes to this. I know he's had a second place finish, but I'm talking about getting into the win column, going up against somebody that's got a couple super speedway races, and like Eric Almirola has. So, and I know how strong that SHR program is with the Roush Yates power under the hood.
Yeah, without question, very, very strong. I think any other matchup in terms of matchup group two, I would have to say that I like Kurt Busch over Clint Bowyer, just from a perspective of Kurt Busch being very secure and conservative in terms of bringing his race car home in one piece. We have not seen Clint Bowyer have that type of success recently on the super speedways. So at minus 110, I'd give the slight edge to Kurt Busch.
You got the same matchup there when you look at Eric Almirola and Alex Bowman. Now, of course, Alex Bowman recently joined the ranks and the very small fraternity of those who have won at NASCAR's top level. So he's got a little momentum going behind him. But Alex knows as well as everybody else you're going to have friends to win at Daytona, and those friends could come from your manufacturer.
Yeah, I think so. I think everybody watched it at Talladega, so now you're going to have...
Okay, well, what Alex was going to say there was, Jeff, the fact that this came out at Talladega and also at Daytona earlier this year. There were some higher-ups from some of these manufacturers that got their drivers together. Now, this is not a new thing. Actually, we can go back to Alex Bowman right now. Let's see what he has.
Yeah, I think so. I think everybody watched it at Talladega, so now you're going to have probably elevated levels of it from all three camps. Each camp is probably going to try to replicate what we were able to do with the Chevrolets and have their own twist on it, and it's going to be really interesting. It's tough to do. Really glad it worked out in Talladega, and glad we were able to get one of our cars a win. But yeah, that's just that's kind of the point we're at with speedway racing, and there's big strength in numbers, and you want all those numbers to be on the same agenda.
So you got to go back to 2017 to find the last time that Chevrolet was able to win back-to-back races. With Alex Bowman being our most recent winner, that could happen this time around. But Jeff Hammond, when you go back to earlier this year, this is not the first time this has ever happened, but it seems like it's been a while, and it got some publicity that the higher-ups from some of these manufacturers got all their drivers together and said, look, we know you're out there for yourself. Yeah, you got to be. You want to be, drivers want to be in victory lane no matter who helps them there. But it would behoove us, guys, if we all stuck together within the Toyota camp, within the Chevrolet camp, and worked with one another. And Jeff, we saw it play out. They listened to the bosses at the manufacturer, and we saw a lot of guys stick together. And Alex Bowman said that's probably what it's going to take.
No, and we've seen that this is something that, I mean, for many races and for many years, this has been kind of like the protocol. The difference has been with Chevrolet as well as with Ford is they have so many people in the Ford camp and so many people in the Chevrolet camp. They have to limit that a little bit, and they would like to get it down to where 6, 7, 8 of their teams can work together, and they can kind of like dominate the top 10. And they just don't want you helping another manufacturer to beat one of your teammates. I mean, that's what it's all boiling down to. In the case of Toyota, they've got fewer cars involved. Really, I guess you'd say they've got about 5 or 6 teams that have got the Toyota emblem on them that they can kind of like count on, and they're trying to make these guys work together. That's what happened at Talladega. The Chevrolets, the Hendrick cars worked together when they needed to, and they were able to get a big win out of it. So we'll wait and see tonight once we get racing how it kind of plays out, but do not believe for 1 minute at the end of the day that you may wind up seeing individuals say, the heck with what everybody believes. I'm going for myself. I want to win at Daytona. So it all depends on who it is and what the circumstances are late in the race or when the weather's coming, whichever one comes first.
So as we continue to take a look at some of the other head-to-head matchup, Hammond, when you look at some of these drivers before, Dale Jr. and Tony Stewart made no bones about it. They looked for each other, even though one was a Chevrolet driver at the time and one was a Toyota driver at the time. They made no bones about the fact that they raced well together on the super speedways and would look for one another.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you get with somebody that you can trust more than another, and you feel that comfort. You know that the guy's not going to hit you too hard in the back end. He's not going to hit you. He's going to match up with you and hit you square, and he knows when to get off, not to put you in jeopardy. So that's a comfort level that a lot of guys love to get to, and if they happen to find that within their own manufacturer, so be it. But if it's somebody else and it makes a big difference, and everybody knows at one time, everybody loved to get a chance to race with Dale Earnhardt Jr. and or Tony Stewart. But when those two guys got hooked up, you knew that one of the two of them were going to go to victory lane.
So, Jeff Coyandro, let's take a look at our last group of head-to-head matchups here and see some of the other names that have popped up and who they are paired up against and perhaps where some value may be or some sharp money in some of the drivers that are matched up pair-to-pair, head-to-head here in this. Daniel Suarez and Jimmy Johnson is one interesting thing, I feel, because Daniel Suarez has come on as of late somewhat. So is Jimmy Johnson. So that one, when you look at that, they give now at Daniel Suarez with even money and Jimmy Johnson at minus 120. That tells you the odds makers are giving the edge slightly to Daniel Suarez.
Yeah, and when you look at that matchup, it could be that it started out as 110 each, and then the money has supported Jimmy Johnson. So Jimmy Johnson is actually the slight favorite there at minus 120. I like the way he's mixed it up in practice this weekend. He looks pretty aggressive. He was running near the front. And I think at that point, rather than lay the 120 on Johnson or take the even money on Suarez, I'd probably just lay off and keep my hands off that matchup.
Okay, so one thing about as we take a look at some of these other matchups, Kyle Larson in the number 42 team, they made the decision to change their fuel probe. Therefore, they are going to the back of the pack. Again, if this was Sonoma, some other place, we would place a lot of credence on that. But Jeff Hammond, when you look at that, going to the back of the pack at Daytona or Talladega really doesn't matter that much, especially when it comes to a betting line.
No, and I think that, a situation like this with the caliber car that Kyle will have tonight, that really won't hurt him very much. He'll be able to work his way up through the field pretty easy. He'll find a dance partner real quick in William Byron. So I look for the 42 and the 24 to hook up pretty early on and start kind of picking their way up through there. Don't be surprised by the time we get 10 laps under our belt, they'll be talking about, well, here comes Kyle Larson and William Byron. Started dead last, but they've already found their way to the front. I'm sure they'll be fast.
And I guess, Jeff, when you look at past performance, it tends to not really be indicative of future growth, because when you look at Eric Jones, I mean, he's a guy coming in here you would think that a lot of people would place more odds on, but we just don't see his name much. We haven't talked about him much so far, and he also has the hunger factor on his side as well. He's on the outside looking in now.
Yeah, I like Eric Jones. I think he's proven himself as a young, aggressive super speedway racer. Again, it's really going to come down to him being clean, along with all drivers. And is there enough in the Toyota camp for them to run together, perhaps pair up with some Fords, to try to surpass this Chevy train that appears to be coming on very strong? So I like Jones. I think I'd rather take him perhaps to win a group or to win the race, as opposed to a head-to-head where you're giving $1.30.
Yeah, and again, I believe, Jeff, there's good evidence back there when you look at it. When you look at some of the drivers that are 20-1 when it comes to odds to win, it seems to be a lot safer wager than some of these head-to-head matchups where you just really, on the super speedway, don't know what's going to happen in terms of head-to-head matchups.
Yeah, you're really depending on them to basically run clean, and their head-to-head counterpart to, end up with some kind of crash damage or be eliminated. It's not too often, probably the minority of these matchups will be decided on the last lap. Most of them will be decided probably prior to that with cars that have been eliminated due to incidents.
Yeah, so if you take the last 6 races on super speedways that have finished not under caution but finished under green flag conditions, if you take the last 6 and add up the margin of victory, it doesn't equal 1 second. If you imagine that, they have been that close, and 3 of the last 6 have been determined by a last lap pass where the winner only led 1 lap. And that was the final lap of the race. So that just to let you know what we're going into when you go to place your wagers. There is so much going on and so much recent history in these super speedway races that causes for excitement and also makes them pretty difficult to handicap as well. We're going to take a look at the groups where some of the safer and some of the sharper money might be. And when we come back to Racers Odds, we'll look at the groups, who's matched up with whom, and what drivers may be able to beat the rest of their competition when it comes to groups. We'll be back with more of the Racers Odds in just a moment.
If you suffer from heartburn or other digestive-related disorders, then there is a new, safe, better, and natural alternative to better digestive wellness and heartburn relief. Praxid not only provides relief of heartburn, but Praxid takes a 360-degree approach to support better digestion, protect you from harmful bacteria, and also balance your stomach to improve digestive functions.
To order, call now, 1-800-829-5735. That's 1-800-829-5735.
Gone Racing. There's still wheel to wheel. The weekly NASCAR show that gets you ready for this week's big race and more. Oh, yeah! Take a ride with us to Victory Lane on Gone Racing.
We just got these lines last night. It was plus 700 on Brad Keselowski. He's already down to plus 550, so I think we know where the money is.
It's going that way.
And that's where my money would have been, too.
Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern on VSiN, Channel 204, and SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90.
Great job.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. It's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
Do you use the expensive blue or yellow pills to charge your sex life? Are you thinking about it? What if we could promise you the same results for less than $3 a pill? If you're paying $20 a pill for the other pills, you're getting taken to the cleaners. Call On Call Pharmacy right now and save as much as $700. 800-884-7919. On Call Pharmacy delivers the exact same results for less than $3. You'll save more than $16 a pill for the same results. And right now, radio callers will get 44 blue or or yellow pills for $120 with free discreet shipping. You can save more than $700 off pharmacy prices. Call On Call Pharmacy now and take advantage of this special offer. 800-884-7919. Charge your sex life now and save a ton of money. Call now and get your 44 pills and save over $700 and qualify for free shipping. Stop overpaying and call right now. 800-884-7919. 800-884-7919. 800-884-7919.
And now more Racers Odds with John Roberts, Jeff Hammond, and Jeff Caliandro.
And welcome back, everybody. Good news from Daytona. The rain has stopped. It came down very heavily just a few moments ago, but now it has stopped, and they will commence track drying procedures very shortly. And let's remember, Jeff, we do have that new Air Titan machine, which dries these tracks very quickly. But then again, this is a very large racetrack. It's kind of a tough dry, to put it that way.
Yeah, it can be challenging, but the good thing is they've got all that equipment in Daytona. That's pretty much the home base for a lot of this stuff. So they'll be throwing everything at it. They realize what they're up against when they come to Daytona. This is not the first time that they've had to deal with rain at this race in July, and they've got the lights. So they're going to get this race in. You just got to be patient enough and make darn sure you might want to take a little early nap while they're drying the racetrack and get ready to make it into Sunday morning, because it will probably run over into Sunday morning, but they will get this 400-miler in.
Yep, and then we're planning on staying up. So stay up with us and enjoy some racing.
You are?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Wouldn't miss it for the world.
All right.
All right. Let's move on now to our group wagers, where we sometimes find some really good value. Jeff Caliandro, when you talk about a group, describe for us what that group is, what it means, and where the value may be.
Well, when you look at the group matchups, John, basically it's 4 drivers that are pitted against one another. And basically what you want to do is wager on the driver who will have the best overall finish or the best finish out of the 4. And when you look at, we'll just take Group A, for example, that has Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Busch. If you were to bet on Joey Logano, who's one of the favorites of this group, and you put down $10 and he were to win the group, you would collect $25 profit and you would get back your initial $10 wager. So groups are sort of a hybrid between head-to-heads and picking a race winner.
So, Hammond, let's put you on the spot here. Group A, who would you take out of this group? This is a very difficult group to pick. All these guys have their own prowess when it comes to racing on the super speedways.
You know, the thing is, when I'm looking at this group, I like, that they're all very talented, but I'll be honest with you, because I don't like how sometimes some people have perceived them as far as when it comes to being good dance partners, I'd stay away from it.
Stay away from the whole group.
Whole group.
Okay. All right, Jeff Caliandro, let's move on.
My opinion.
That's your opinion. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And just to get to Jeff's point, let's look at this for a second. Of these 4 drivers, these are about the best 4 drivers. They have pretty much the lowest odds to win the race. Every one of these drivers finished 33rd or worse in last year's race. So while they may have the best odds to go out and win, you just can't count on it with the amount of incidents that we see at Daytona. So I agree with Jeff. Hands off.
Okay, what about Group B? Let's move on to Group B. This one features Chase Elliott, the last winner at one of these super speedways. Kevin Harvick, who's won twice at Daytona, but Harvick has not won there since 2010. He's won one of each, the February and the July races. Clint Boyer, a very good plate racer, but it's either feast or famine for him. And, of course, we know, guys, Ryan Blaney is dangerous at any time. He certainly can be a winner, Hammond.
Well, when you take a look at what's going on there, I mean, all I can say is we know the type of resume that Kevin Harvick has. When it comes to Ryan Blaney, he has finished in the top 10 the last 3 races of this season in 2019. But here again, when I'm looking at what's going on and knowing where the kind of like the power has come from as of late when it comes to super speedway racing, if I had to make a pick right here, I'd have to probably go with the Chevrolet and Chase Elliott.
I believe I would too. Jeff, do you stay away, or do you like Chase Elliott, or do you like somebody else?
I think if you were going to bet this group, I think you got to look at Chase Elliott and Ryan Blaney. Harvick has an average finish of 24th in his last 6 super speedway races, and we've seen how inconsistent Clint Boyer has been. So I would probably eliminate those 2 to start and then whittle it down between Elliott and Blaney.
Yep, and pretty close there to Chase Elliott being plus 260 and Ryan Blaney being plus 265. Okay, on to Group C, and that has some interesting stories in there as well. Kurt Busch, so many times second place on the Super Speedway, finally busted through and got him that win. Eric Almirola has won before. Ricky Stenhouse has won on the Super Speedways before, but it's interesting to see one of our top drivers we constantly talk about. He's over at the Super Speedways, but those places where he hasn't won before, they've been falling. Martin Truex Jr. is knocking those things off the list. So, again, a very intriguing group and very difficult to pick.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I think when you look at this group, you've got the two former winners recently with Almirola and Stenhouse, both at plus 270. And then you look at Martin Truex, and he has an average finish of 27th in his super speedway races so far this year. I go back to Kurt Busch, I believe he's the deserving favorite, as he's been running at the finish in 83% of his super speedway races over the course of his long career. I like that kind of consistency.
Okay, so interesting Group D we have here. We have Alex Bowman in the Chevrolet. He, of course, is our most recent winner, and he broke that streak of second places. Certainly, he would be one to keep an eye on. Kyle Larson going to the back of the pack with the fuel probe change. Paul Menard has surprised us before. So have Wood Brothers Racing when it comes to racing at Daytona. You can ask Trevor Bayne about that, about how that can go from time to time. And also, I don't think still, guys, you can ever write off Jimmy Johnson at plus 270. This is an interesting group to pick, but it's a difficult one. Jeff, how do you see this one?
Very difficult group. Just looking at all four drivers, I like Alex Bowman at sort of an aggregate level, but at plus 230, those odds are just too short to defeat three other drivers. So I think, again, for me, this is one that I would stay away from.
Yeah, that certainly is a tough one as well there to try to pick amongst them. Now, Group E for us, Daniel Suarez, William Byron, Eric Jones, and Matt DiBenedetto. Among that group, your only winner on the Super Speedway is Eric Jones at plus 255. Suarez, Byron's going to the back of the pack with a wrecked up race car. But again, chances are, Jeff, their plan B is as good as anybody's plan A. It's out there. And Matt DiBenedetto has surprised us here and there with some great runs. This is a very ripe ground for somebody like Matt DiBenedetto to pass those three other drivers, because he's proven he can do it before, and he's been on a roll lately. There might be something there, Jeff.
Yeah, there certainly could be. I like DiBenedetto, but he's only had one top 10 in his last 6 super speedway races. Not because he hasn't run well, it's just that he's gotten caught up in a track incident generally late in the race. So from that perspective, it's a little bit scary. I think I'd have to look at Eric Jones as the only, proven commodity to actually take home the checkered in a super speedway race at plus 255.
So Hammond, Group E, if we put you on the spot, if you had to pick it, would you go by, or would you pick somebody?
I would let that ride on by.
Just want to let that just ride on by.
That's right there. He
what
was
if you
talking
had to? What if we made you?
If you made me pick it, I would probably go with Eric Jones.
Absolutely.
I would probably go with Eric Jones at this point in time, because I know he's got a lot at stake, but I think that pressure may get him in trouble in the long run. But I like him as far as his overall speed. I think he'll be better than the others.
Yeah, and perhaps dancing partners as well. You got to have friends to win at Daytona and Talladega, and some of the friends they might be able to group up with. Eric Jones has
believe it or not, though, the one that I'm waiting on is Group F.
You like Group F?
Well, there's a lot of intrigues right there. When I look at Group F, I see winners and I see guys that are on a hot streak. I see young guys, and I still see some experience mixed in there. So you got to kind of start dissecting. And I'm gonna put it back on Jeff. Start dissecting from your viewpoint, and I'm gonna tell you what I'm thinking from the crew chief side.
Well, I agree with you, Jeff. I think this is the tightest group of all of them. And I like Ryan Preece at the long shot. He has an average finish of 5.5 in both super speedway races this season. I like the way he looks. We've seen Austin Dillon obviously have success at Daytona, but he has one win and one lap led in his last 6 super speedway races. So it was all or nothing. Just looking at this group, I see it very competitive, but I'll take the long shot in Ryan Preece.
And I'm with you when it comes to start dissecting this thing down to its nth degree. Guys that are hot right now, and so far he's on that roll as far as telling me that I figured this out, whether it's by luck or maybe he's got some kind of intuition when it comes to racing at super speedways. When you can do it at the 500 and then back it up like he did at Talladega, that impresses me. And we know that they've got fast race cars. They've got good power under the hood when it comes from Hendrick. So I kind of lump them into that little bit of an unknown. But the young age of him is what's impressing me. And I kind of bring in real close right in behind him. Believe it or not, Daniel Hemrick, good run at Talladega. We know that this young man is an aspiring race car driver. And once again, I like that age to go along with possibly pulling a rabbit out of his hat.
Guys, are we missing something here, though? Because Ryan Newman, it was ancient history, but Ryan Newman did win a Daytona 500. He's got Roush Yates horsepower. Out of that group, he may be the one that's methodical, and that's the way they've done it so far this year in that 6 car. They've been methodical.
And John, it's not hard to argue with you about that because he's got a finish. He finished in the top 10, 3 of his last 4 at Daytona. So, I mean, it's a good racetrack for him, but I think what Jeff and I are looking at, the recklessness, I say recklessness.
Recklessness,
but at the same time, I think throw caution to the wind. I like Ryan Priest at the little bit longer deal. I mean, that's what I'm kind of intrigued about. If I think he's got a shot of outsmarting and outrunning the old guy.
Well, just to speak to John's point, you look at Ryan Newman. He won the Daytona 500 at 37-1. He's plus 11 spots in his 2019 super speedway races. So I definitely think that there's, a possibility that he could win this group. I just like the odds that are underdog for Ryan Priest. And that's about the only reason why I would shade toward him in this group F.
There's a hunger factor, and it's there when it comes to racing on the super speedways. Now, he's racing for a group, Ryan Priest, that has proven before what it can mean to one of these small teams, and that's something that you have to take into consideration. One of the small teams that's out there, they will probably tell their driver, it's okay if you just come back with the steering wheel, because it can mean millions in incentives, and it can mean so much for a race team, Hammond, to have that kind of influx of cash and to get that kind of focus. You're out there to get noticed. You're out there to have people look at you. If you're not in that top 16 when it comes playoff time, people aren't looking at you, and there's a battle for sponsorship going on out there. So when it comes to these last laps, or perhaps maybe the 100-lap mark, if we get to, somebody like Ryan Priest would be ripe to take a chance.
No, and that's what we're trying to point at right now, is that Ryan Priest has got everything to win and nothing to lose. When we see some of these other groups, A and B, for example, a lot of these guys have already got themselves pretty well situated in the right place as far as the points are concerned. They would like to get to victory lane, but they may not be willing to throw caution to the wind quite as quick as this young man is.
Well, it is never too early to talk about championship and talk about playoffs. Hammond, we hear it when somebody wins the Daytona 500. It doesn't take them long. It's only the first race of the season, but it doesn't take them long to say, hey, man, we have guaranteed our spot now in the playoffs. We know we're going to be one of those 16. So that was Denny Hamlin. He was locked in right away. He finds himself now going off at 16-1 to win the championship. If you look at your points right now, they almost reflect odds to win the championships. There's no huge surprises right here, but this is the big picture, and it certainly can change a lot in the next couple of weeks.
No, and it could take a big swing at changing everything tonight if they get everything in that we're looking for, and something jumps up and changes, the win column, you might say, and we see somebody that we don't expect, like a Daniel Suarez or even a Clint Boyer, get that coveted win and get themselves locked into this championship race. Once again, it could wind up changing the overall dynamic, especially if you drop on down there and you have somebody like William Byron who gets a win.
It could change in big time in a hurry. But Joey Logano, Jeff, is our current points leader. He finds himself plus 800. You got to go up to Kyle Busch at plus 250, Martin Truex, and some of those things, though, that you have to look at in terms of where these guys are at championship odds is that bucket they're filling up with playoff points. Along the way, every lap matters, every stage matters, because you can accrue playoff points throughout the regular season and take them into the playoffs with you, and that helps you in that big picture, and we're talking about that championship. Your top 3 guys right now have them, and actually 4 of the top 5 have them. Everybody else is really anxious to get their shot at the championship.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be very competitive. I think when you look at the championship odds at this point in the season, it might be a wise move to just try and predict the 4 that you think will end up at Homestead, and then handicap Homestead with those 4 drivers. So, for example, if Kyle Larson were to somehow make it to Homestead, I believe that he's one of the best drivers at Homestead. So you kind of look at handicapping Homestead along with the drivers that you predict will be part of the Final 4.
Yeah, and obviously we can see that, though, from that picture. The odds makers and the handicappers have looked at that, Jeff, because we see that up and down that list of who might be the champion, and that, again, could change a lot within the next couple weeks. We got to take a quick break here on Racers Odds. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of our favorite picks, something that we're looking at that might be some really smart money. Stay with us, everybody. We're keeping you in the know, giving you the knowledge you need to make the smart money wager on NASCAR's Top Series. Stay with us.
If you suffer from heartburn or other digestive-related disorders, then there is a new, safe, better, and natural alternative to better digestive wellness and heartburn relief. Praxid not only provides relief of heartburn, but Praxid takes a 360-degree approach to support better digestion, protect you from harmful bacteria, and also balance your stomach to improve digestive functions.
To order, call now 1-800-829-5735. That's 1-800-829-5735.
Before the pros tee off for this week's golf tournament, the VSiN experts help you make the cut on long shots.
When I profiled all the players for this tournament, I said Schauffele's number 1 on my board. I like the odds, 25-1. Let's go ahead and play X.
Brady Cannon, Matt Humans, and Wes Reynolds are your weekly betting caddies and help you cash those tickets.
Don't be afraid to maybe take some longer odd guys.
Don't miss Long Shots, Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern on VSiN, the only golf betting show you need, exclusively on Sirius XM Channel 204.
Hi, this is Doug Rice of the Performance Racing Network. Whenever the PRN crew heads to Las Vegas, we always stay at the South Point Hotel and Casino. You know, it's our home away from home. The South Point features great restaurants, free parking, and they go out of their way to make race fans feel welcome. So when you make your plans to visit Vegas and attend the South Point 400, it just makes sense to book into the South Point. The South Point also offers fantastic room and race ticket packages. Make your reservations now at southpointcasino.com.
The IRS is the most feared agency in the world. You've heard ads from other companies offering to help taxpayers only if they owe over $10,000. Here at Platinum Tax Defenders, we're A-plus rated with the Better Business Bureau, and we're proud to be one of the only tax firms in the country who understands that people who owe less than $10,000 need help just as badly. The IRS doesn't care how much money you owe. They'll still garnish your wages and even seize your assets. So whether you owe just a few $1,000s or hundreds of thousands, call now for your free tax consultation. If you qualify, we may even be able to reduce your tax debt down to a small fraction of what you owe. So don't wait until the IRS seizes your property and garnishes your wages. Call 800-856-1330 and get your tax problem resolved once and for all. That number again is 800-856-1330. 800-856-1330.
It's more Racers Odds.
And welcome back, everybody, to Racers Odds. We are dodging raindrops right now. The Daytona International Speedway, something that often happens in July in Central Florida. And you see there the radar. That is a current radar map right now. We are hoping that those rains move away quickly and we can get to that all-important 100-lap mark. Earlier this week, NASCAR issued a bulletin to race teams and said that they have changed the stage lengths. So therefore, for this to be an official race, we would have to get to lap number 100 tonight, and instead of moving on and perhaps doing more racing tomorrow. A little bonus for the fans, but not necessarily that good for the teams who certainly want to get on to the next race. But, Jeff, it's just part of life. Rain happens in racing, and it's one of the few things you can't do anything about.
Been dealing with it for better than 40-some years as far as my career is concerned. So, yeah, it's just one of those things that you have to learn to deal with, and you have to be prepared mentally to take advantage of what basically the track and the rest of the competitors offer up once you have to get through after you get done dealing with Mother Nature.
So our odds-making expert is Jeff Coyandro. Jess, let's take a look now at back at some of the favorites, the odds-on favorites to win this race as far as individual drivers go.
Yeah, so we know that Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski have been the favorites all week. They've been very steady at 8-1. Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch at 10-1, and Chase Elliott and Kevin Harvick at 12-1. You know, an approach that's been profitable at Daytona and Talladega for quite a few years actually is sort of taking a team of drivers. Usually a favorite is not involved in that team. Usually you're starting out at about 12 or 14-1, and you might take a driver like Chase Elliott at 12-1, and then perhaps Ricky Stenhouse at 18-1, and you take the bankroll that you're willing to risk on this race, and you sort of layer your bet. So you might put the most, if you had $50, let's say, to bet on the race, you might put the bulk of it, or 25, on Elliott, and then a little bit less on Stenhouse because he's at 18-1. And then you could go even deeper and look at a Bubba Wallace or a Ryan Newman at 50-1, 60-1, where you would put decreasing amounts on those drivers. So ultimately you would win about the same. And if any of your drivers won, you would definitely turn a profit.
Very interesting approach. But Jeff and Jeff Hammond, Jeff C. and Jeff Hammond, guys, when we just look at those favorites to win the race, what do you think? If you got to pick a driver right now, Hammond, what would you pick if you had to pick a single driver?
If I had to pick a single driver right at the moment, I'm going to be looking long shot type. I'm going to go with Jimmy Johnson, the guy who in 2013 he won both the 500 and the 400. But what I'm looking at is the momentum he brought out of Chicago with a fourth place finish, as well as his average running position during the course of that race was right around fourth. I believe maybe Jimmy's getting a little bit of a feel here. He did look good in practice. We know how fast Hendrick Motorsports can be. So right at the moment, if I'm looking for some long shot money to put something on, I'm looking at Jimmy.
So Jeff Coyandro, when it comes to an individual driver, is there anybody you're looking at if you have to pick one?
Well, I think if I had to pick one, I might look at Ryan Blaney at 14-1. He's led 142 laps at Daytona. He's starting 10th, and I just like him as being part of the Ford package who can sort of get lost up near the front. He will be pushed, and he can push. So I think he has the type of respect that can have him end up in victory lane.
Okay, so those are our favorites, but also each week on Racers Odds, the three of us are going to pick one area from any of the areas that are available, whether it's a single driver to win the race, whether it's a head-to-head matchup, or a group. We're going to pick one out of the group that we certainly like or are leaning to as what we think might be a great value on a bet. And if I had to pick right now, I would definitely say that Chase Elliott as the last winner on a super speedway, his odds to win are 12-1. He's starting 7th. That one win he's gotten so far this season is the other race where we use this particular aerodynamic package. Now, granted, he has no wins at the Daytona International Speedway, but that group can certainly get it done. The team can get it done. And Chase Elliott has proven to us that he is a good super speedway racer. So if I got to pick anything out of all the bets we've talked about today, that's the one I'm going for, Jeff Coyandro.
It's an excellent pick. I can definitely, it's very justifiable. And I think 12-1 is very even, justifiable odds. I like the way he looks. I think if I were going to make one pick, I'd probably take Ryan Preece to win Group F at plus 285. I just like the way he's performed in his young career on the super speedways, and I'm not particularly enamored by the other three drivers. So as a long shot value, I like Ryan Preece.
So Jeff Hammond, what do you think?
Well, I'm looking at some head-to-head stuff. I mean, I've told you kind of like before, one of the things I was looking at was Eric Almirola, going up against somebody like Martin Truex Jr. I just thought maybe he would be a guy that if you got to go to a head-to-head pick, I think that he's won here before, and I think at the same time, Martin's had his struggles on the super speedways. He could break through tonight, but I don't think so. I think I'm gonna do something I'd like to do on a head-to-head. I'd go Eric Almirola against Martin Truex Jr.
Okay, so there are our favorites when it comes to bets we were looking at taking, but also want to say once again that anytime you race at Daytona, it has huge implications, whether it's the 500 or the July race. Racing at Daytona is special, and there are many reasons why, as a race fan, you definitely want to watch every lap because there could be disaster around every corner when these drivers are hooked up in a 200-mile-an-hour freight train. If you look back at the last couple of races, 3 out of the last 6, the driver who won the race only led 1 lap, and that was the final lap. And often, Jeff Hammond, when you're watching a race at Daytona, if you are leading in turn number 4 on the last lap, that does not guarantee you a win.
No, it doesn't guarantee you a win. And I heard Cale Yarborough tell me one time a kind of a funny saying. He said, when it comes to super speedway racing, you want to get a good dance partner, but every now and then you pick a porcupine. And you know what happens when you dance with a porcupine? You get stuck. So you just never know when it comes to super speedway racing what you're going to wind up with.
So, Jeff Coyandro, will you be glued to this one every lap?
Oh, this is absolutely one of my favorite races of the year. It has been for years. I'm well equipped to wait out the rain and watch this into the wee hours. Luckily, I'm on the West Coast, so it might still be Saturday by the time this one winds up.
Hey, that ain't fair. That ain't fair. That ain't fair.
It
Looking
could
very forward. Absolutely.
Jeff, thank you very much for the insight and the information. Folks, let's take one more look at the current radar picture over the Daytona International Speedway right now. There you see the green. Shortly ago, we got word that the rain had stopped somewhat. Looks like it's picked back up again. But then again, they have a very sophisticated drying system down there. Even though it is a big asphalt track, it can dry in a hurry. And certainly, Hammond, we are hoping that we get to that 100-lap mark that would make this race official this evening.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody who's followed us tonight. Hopefully we, gave them some insight. The folks from NASCAR.com as well as Veasan, as all those fans that follow Sirius XM. So, excited about having what we got going on here at Racers Odds, and hopefully tonight we've entertained and educated.
And more states across the nation are legalizing wagering on sports events, and that includes NASCAR. So we're hoping that this program and other things around the country that are going on right now bring some wagerers to NASCAR and bring some NASCAR fans to wagering as well. Want to thank everybody for joining us today. Pat Patterson joined us from the racetrack, and we're keeping an eye on the skies for you, and hope you join us again. Thanks to everybody on NASCAR.com for joining us. You can catch us on Sirius XM, the Veasan Network, and the Performance Racing Network. We're here for you every race day to give you the information you need to know to find the sharp money. So thanks, everybody, for Jeff Hammond, Jeff Coyandro, everybody in the control room. I'm John Roberts saying thanks for coming along for the ride.
This has been Racers Odds, a presentation of PRN, the Performance Racing Network.